Good evening, everybody. This is Darius Assemi, your host at GV Wire Unfiltered. Welcome to another great episode. We have several, uh, well, at least one guest. Uh, no, we have two special guests. Edward Smith, our journalist, that's covered a lot of things, Fresno Unified and education, and Roger Bonakdar, a local attorney who deal that is going to be answering some questions about Fresno Unified. And we have Arturo Flores, mayor of Huntington Park, California, and a Marine Corps veteran. But he has not showed up yet. We hope that he'll get on in about 30 minutes or less, because that's when he'll be on. We're going to talk about masks. Oh, there he is. Look at that. Just in time arrival. Mayor Arturo Flores is with us. Let's put him on the screen. Can you put all of our guests on the screen? There we go. Okay. I was just about ready to say you have 30 minutes to parachute in, Arturo, but here you are. Okay, but we're going to get to you in about 15, 20 minutes. Enjoy the show. We're going to talk about a few other things, national, international, and local. Okay, let's dive in. By the way, welcome all three guests. Edward Smith, our journalist, Roger Bonakdar, a very prominent local attorney that has busted a lot of bad actors here and represented hardworking taxpayers in our community, and Arturo Flores, mayor of Huntington Park, California. Okay, we'll come to the mayor here shortly, but weather, fantastic weather. The rest of the country, or some parts of the country is getting a cooling trend, but we're going to enjoy this fantastic weather through at least Monday of next week. It looks like it may be heating up after that. So enjoy the beautiful weather. And showers reach their simultaneous peak in summer skies. This is meteor showers. Tonight and tomorrow night, be on the lookout. How do you think the Fresno State football team will fare under the new coach, Matt Entz? It's too early to tell. Majority of you shared with us, followed by Bulldogs will win at least 9 games and exit the Mountain West in style. Okay, what do you think about President Donald Trump's past relationship with late Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted child sex offender? There are the numbers. Where there's smoke, there's fire. That's over 60% of you responded. Again, this is a poll, social media poll on GVWire social media outlets. Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza? Yes, it's genocide when you destroy a country and deliberately starve its people, including women and children. Almost 67% of you voted in that fashion. Israel announces daily pauses in Gaza fighting as aid drops begin. And here's what's interesting. U.S. approval of Israel Gaza offensive drops to 32%. Polls show. The lowest. So according to the new poll, now this approval now stands at 60%, reflecting a sharp 10-point decline in approval since September. Do you approve or disapprove of the military action Israel has taken in Gaza? And there are the numbers, the disapproval numbers. And then please say if you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Unfavorable numbers going up substantially over the last few years. And it kind of dropped. It looks like late last year, but it's at its all-time high. And of course, is it Democrats or younger voters under 35? The disapproval ratings are even higher. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. This is from August of 2024. Quote: "It may be just and moral to starve 2 million Gaza residents until Israel hostages are returned, but no one in the world would let us." End of quote. Netherlands bans entry for far-right ministers. Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. That's one of the first countries that has announced that happened today or yesterday. Gaza death toll hits 60,000 as global monitors demand action to avert famine. It's really interesting in this day and age. People are starving to death. We're watching it. Some of it because of our support, and we're not doing a whole lot about it. It's really disappointed. United Kingdom will recognize Palestinian statehood in September, barring Israeli-Hamas ceasefire. And then a lot, by the way, one of the organizations that covers this war and covers both sides is the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, and of course New York Times on our soil. How Israel's war with Hamas became unjust. Hamas bears responsibility for the lion's share of suffering by Gazans in the war with Israel. However, Israel's strategic choices have led to the starvation of children. Israel needs to find a path to lasting peace with the Palestinians. But I'd be interested if they're interested in that or not. By the way, what is it? Several of you have asked us, what is the definition of an anti-Semite? What's the definition of a Semite? So here's a definition of Semitic people, because we hear anti-Semitic, you're anti-Semite, etc. Semitic people or Semites is an absolute term for an ethnic, cultural, or racial group associated with the people of the Middle East, including Arabs, Jews, Akkadians, and Phoenicians. The terminology is now largely unused outside the grouping Semitic languages and linguistics. Marjorie Taylor Greene, first Republican lawmaker to call Gaza crisis as a genocide. MAGA Republican, by the way. She's the first Republican in Congress to use this term. She condemns the humanitarian disaster unfolding there. That's real, quote, that's real starvation stuff. We have to get the kids fed, President Trump said of Gaza on Monday, but not a whole lot is happening. More folks are starving to death. Trump warns at the same time, President Trump warns Iran that its nuclear sites could be bombed again. Let me look at a couple of comments. Genevieve Molina, prayers for these poor children. I wish I had the money to send them food, and Trump is a rotten person. Okay. California may soon ban selling new handguns by Glock, like the ones that Kamala Harris owns. GB Wire article has more of that. Check that out. I'm going to skip one. What does Trump crackdown on homelessness mean for California? Take a look at that on gbwire.com. And with that, I'm going to dive into what the heck is going on at Fresno Unified. First, I want to bring in Edward Smith, award-winning journalist at GB Wire, by the way. It's not Pulitzer yet, but we're getting close to that. Edward, kind of you're on mute first. You're on mute. Just tell our audience, the unfiltered audience, what the heck is going on with Fresno Unified. Fresno Unified spending $162,000 compared to $2 billion is not a lot of money, but are they following due process? What the heck is going on? And why should people care if Fresno Unified wants to spend $162,000 on lunch? Is it lunch or is it something else they're spending on?
Yeah, it seems like there's always a development, isn't there?
Yeah.
So district administration let board members know last week that at that they kind of changed their minds and they won't be voting on a settlement for its former communications chief Nikki Henry. After she quit. Even in its contract, it has in the contract settlement, it kind of said that it won't be approved until board members approve it. But they reversed course and they said, well, we're not going to put it before the board anymore. So they said that the board members already approved it, and they said, oh well, they kind of gave the direction, and they're going to move forward on it. So they're going to give Nikki Henry what amounts to about 80% of her regular salary, or $162,000, for quitting after the AI dossier debacle, where she created dossier, or she said that she created a dossier of fabricated quotes that were attributed to Fresno Teachers Association. Then it later came out that all those quotes were made up using artificial intelligence. So she left, and the district's now giving her $162,000 to settle some sort of legal claim. They still have not divulged that. We're still waiting on that information, hoping to see what we can get out of that.
Is it, I read your article. You have a lot of great coverage, by the way, on that. Is there any hint that, I mean, when people have to get paid that kind of money, usually they know a lot of stuff, and they don't want it to be shared. I can think of something that's going on nationally right now. I'm not going to mention any names, but uh, that everybody's concerned about on a nationwide level. But what is why would a district? What do you think the district is giving this kind of money? 80% of an annual salary.
There's
You
a
believe
lot of
she knows stuff?
speculation about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
There's a
What is it?
lot of speculation about that. And in the contract itself, it says that this is to settle some sort of litigation. Now, they're being very vague about this, but board member or trustee Susan Wittrup thinks that, well, they're not hiding much. So she's wondering, could this be about litigation? Could this existing litigation? There's several lawsuits against the district right now. Could it be, what does she know that they're trying to pay off? So there's a lot of speculation going on, and districts being very vague about those reasons for the payment. They're just
Uh,
saying it's to settle some sort of employee dispute.
got it. Several questions. Was the but do Becky Wharton, all the trustees support this? Linda Samuelian, was the board unanimous on approving this? Robert Chavez, typical BS and shenanigans by FU school district. Uh,
Yeah, tried to reach out to board members. They have not gotten back to me. The only one who did was Trustee Susan Wittrup, and she was very vocal about that. She said that she was very opposed to this payout. Other trustees have been opposed to payouts in the past. There was one notable one, Ruthie Quinto, back in, what was it, 2020, I believe, 2021, and Elizabeth Jonathan Rosas opposed that one. So yeah, yeah, but she was the only one who got back to me.
who is which?
Wittrup.
Wittrup.
Yeah,
Wittrup. The other board members did not get back to you,
I have not been able to get a hold of them for some time.
and Wittrup said she's a no if this comes in front of the board
If it
for
goes,
her.
if the board, if the district administration changes its mind again and decides to take it public, she said that she would absolutely be a no.
Okay, so that's 1 out of 7. We don't
It's
know
one out of
how the
seven.
other. Okay, let me bring in Roger Bonakdar, a local attorney. Edward, please stay on, and I know you have to drop off here quickly, but uh, Roger, in your opinion, uh, knowing what you know so far about Fresno Unified, can the administration just say, you know what, it's $162,000. We're just gonna make a decision whether it's the superintendent, Misty Her, or anybody else. Hey, we're just gonna write the check and deal with it later. Or do they even have to get board approval, or should they
Well,
get board approval?
well, most governmental entities will have a threshold for payments, outside payments, when in this type of a context, whether it's an affirmative employment claim by an at-will employee, which is my understanding of Nikki's role. She was at will. Um, or it is a tort claim like an auto accident claim or something like that, once it hits a certain threshold, which is typically, at least locally, around $40,000 or $50,000, when it goes above that, the board has to take some affirmative action and an affirmative vote to approve that sum of money to be paid. So can they do can they do the discussion in closed session? Well, that's probably a yes. So public entities, when they're sued and they're trying to make a decision on how to deal with a lawsuit, which in this case, I have not seen that there was a lawsuit filed, but let's say hypothetically there was one, they could then have a closed session where it is the board, their counsel, and they can have a dialogue and go back and forth about the risks and the risks of going forward, the merits of defenses, the cost of litigation, and all these different things in closed session. And then in closed session, they will have that analysis will occur. It won't go into the minutes in terms of the details and the various participants' positions, but the dialogue and the determination does have to happen, and it does need to be approved in some fashion. It would be really curious to me to see this get approved in some sort of like an email exchange between the trustees, or excuse me, between the board, because that would probably be a Brown Act issue. And I can expand on what the Brown Act is or stop at any point here. I don't want to go too far beyond your question. But the reality is for this sum of money, you would need some affirmative approval by the governing body, by the elected body.
Got it. A couple of questions coming in. Mike Carbasi, our co-host, council president, says, is this discussed in closed session or open session? It's a lot of money, so I'm surprised there isn't any public discussion. It sounds like it wasn't discussed. The dollar amount was not discussed at all. Is that correct, Eric? Let me ask Eric that. I'm not Eric, Edward. I'm sorry. It says Eric, but it's Edward. Okay.
No, that's all right. That was something that Trustee Wittrup brought up, was that back at the June 18th meeting, there was some discussion, and then they had instructed David Chavez to kind of begin negotiations. But she says that there was never any vote taken and that they didn't even know about the $162,000 settlement. She actually requested that the money be brought, or that the contract be brought to her before it went public. So she was upset about that. But no, if as from what she said and from what district communication says, was that it was just direction from the board.
Mike Carbasi said the vote on the money should be an open session vote.
Yeah, what's interesting was when they gave the settlement to former Deputy Superintendent Ruthie Quinto, they did report, it was done in closed session, but they reported out the vote and how each trustee voted. So it differs from standard board practice.
Got it. Mike Carbasi, if we did this at City Hall, the public would be all over us. That's true. Paul Flores, open or closed, you have rights to request the minutes. Okay.
But ultimately, I think that comes down to the simple fact of the vote and how people voted. But whatever analysis, if there was any, and we don't know if there was, between the board and their counsel, who should have, and largely probably was present during this dialogue, if it ever occurred, that wouldn't be public. It is a little odd to see all of this happening outside of the context of a formal proceeding. Municipalities, government entities do settle claims all the time that aren't in litigation. But you do have to have a public purpose for every expenditure of public dollars. You can't simply take the position that the board really likes this employee, or the board really values what this person did, so we want to give them a soft landing. That's not permissible. Now, if there was a contract that had a requirement that they pay it, that would be one thing. That wouldn't even require a vote. But in this context, there does seem to be some good questions that remain unanswered.
Paul Flores says, we need to hear that the logic and the discussion, not just the vote. But it sounds like even if they did take a vote in closed session, which sounds like they're not at this point, then they come out, they're going to say, here's what we voted, here's who voted and how, but they don't need to give the logic behind why they voted. Is that correct? Roger?
Yes, and there's good reason for that in most contexts. So, for example, let's say there was a lawsuit that had been filed, and there were some discovery items. Discovery is like depositions, written questions that go back and forth between the litigants and their attorneys that have sensitive information. The board needs to have the opportunity to engage with their counsel and have an open dialogue with their counsel, and still have the protections of attorney-client privilege in that context. So if you required the board to do everything out in the open, then you couldn't have a board member ask questions of their counsel that would be important to their decision. Like, for example, they wouldn't be able to ask their attorney, hey, is our employee in hot water? Did they really make a false statement? What bad conduct did they engage in? You don't want your attorney sitting out there admitting to the public what you did wrong when you're trying to mitigate or manage your risk or lessen what you're going to have to pay for this either accidental or intentional wrong. So the analysis that goes behind it would be appropriate for closed session, but you still, in my view, need some affirmative action by the governmental entity and its board to pay out this sum of money. You need a vote of some form, some decision by the governmental body, and the vote itself would need to be a public record.
Got it. I think, let me see a couple other comments, and then we're going to wrap up and go to Mayor Flores. Mike Rabasi, true, if the contract allowed this, the question is why does the administration have the ability to negotiate contracts like this? It was a bad look to pay for someone's services when things ended so badly and make FUSD look terrible. Becky Wharton, we need another show to follow up on the apartments at Herndon and Valentine. The courts ruled against Fresno City Council. That's from Becky Wharton. Jim Paulsgrove, I'm not worried about it being discussed in open or closed session as much as my concern for the board to address it. Okay. Any final thought? Oh, there you go. And that's the board, the 7 board members and Misty her. So Edward Smith has been trying to get a hold of all 7 board members with no luck, except for Trustee Susan Wittrup. Hopefully some of the folks on this call can have if they want to reach out and find out why that decision was made without a public hearing or public vote, that's the information you can, those are the folks you can contact. Okay, any other final thoughts, Edward, before we wrap this up?
Yeah, it's really going to be on the board whether the board wants to assert its authority and say that, well, if the district wants to go ahead and make these kinds of decisions unilaterally, it's going to be on the board to decide whether they're going to do this, because I mean, it could set precedent. It could set precedent for other employees who might think that. I know there's a number of other people who feel that way. You start giving away $162,000 to employees who might have a dispute with the district. Well, let's just stop anybody else from asking the same.
One of the, I think was it in one of your articles or was it a quote from one of the, maybe Trustee Wittrup? I don't want to quote anybody. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but when somebody does, I think it was Manuel Bonilla that said when somebody screws up at Fresno Unified, they get promoted or they get a lot of money. Was that from Manuel? I don't want to.
Yeah, FTA President Manuel Bonilla did say that a number of times.
But when teachers get screwed up, make mistakes, they get fired.
You're not getting $162,000.
You got nurses and So more on that information. That's on your screen is the article. Is this the article from today? Fresno Unified's reward and competence?
No, that's a past one. That's a past one. That kind of set off. Yeah, that's the article from today.
Got it. Fresno Unified will pay Nikki Henry $162. Nikki Henry, who was the communications director, was the communications director at Fresno Unified. Roger Bonakdar, final comments.
Privileged to be here and happy to be of service.
Thank you, sir. If you have time, stick around. You may want to listen to Mayor Arturo Flores talk about ICE and masks. Final comment, Linda Samuelian. Principal screws up, they go to downtown and they work their full salary. Okay, with that, Edward, thank you. You can stick around, but if you have to go, I know you have other commitments. Feel free to drop off. Let's bring in Mayor Arturo Flores of, is that New York City, Mayor? No, Huntington Park, California.
New York.
Population 55 million. Now, what's the population of Huntington Park, Mayor?
What officially about 56,000? I think unofficially we're in the you're a little bit more than that, but
Okay, well, welcome to Unfiltered. You have a lot to discuss about why some folks on ICE are wearing masks. Why are they? Well, let's start there. Why are some of these folks wearing masks?
well, I mean, that's a topic that's come up the past 2 or 3 weeks. As you know, one of the issues that we had, or that the people had, was the arbitrary stops, right? The stops were, being done solely based on somebody who would appear to be Latino or quote unquote undocumented, based on the way that they talk, the way that they look. So there's obviously has been a temporary restraining order here in LA County because there's a active lawsuit by the city of LA and 7 other cities that join in that. And the conversation also comes up around these balaclavas. I know the balaclava that you're showing up there is one that would look like a standard issue one. But the balaclavas that we're seeing in LA County and the city of Huntington Park are balaclavas that have, skull masks. I mean, it's some pretty intense stuff that I would say are not government issued. Now, why has this come into the scrutiny that it's come into? Well, it's very simple. You see some of the actions that some of these agents are taking. One, some of those actions have been put to question about their constitutionality. Second, some of the actions that they're taking might reach the level of actual criminal activity in regards to them going hands-on or excessive use of force or even abuse under color of authority, because they are federal agents, they are law enforcement officers. You cannot hold someone accountable if you don't know who they are. And so I know that there's a counter argument there that they use it to protect their families or the doxing. While doxing has been, we've seen some cases of doxing, the data is not there of this mass targeting, this mass victimization of federal agents' families. What we have seen is that some of these individuals that are covering their faces don't want to be identified. They don't want people to know who they are, and that what essentially has done has emboldened them, to take action and to conduct themselves and be part of certain actions that definitely do border or bring up the question around violation of civil rights, and I would say to the extent of even the criminal element of this kind of abuse under color of authority. So that's why it's the talk of this week is a mask. And as you know, LA County today had a motion on the agenda, and I'm not sure. I believe it might have been approved, where the LA County is going to be having something on the books where federal agents are not going to be able to wear to be masked if they're conducting operations in the county.
There's also, Mayor, there's also articles that you see other folks are just wearing masks as well and acting as ICE agents and grabbing people's belongings. Has that happened in Southern California that you know of, or in Huntington Park?
We've had incidents at the national level where you have imposters that will slap on a vest, they'll slap on a balaclava and a LA Dodgers hat, and then all of a sudden they become ICE agents. That was the whole premise around this identification, right? If they really are concerned about their safety, there has to be a way, whether an ID number, a 5-digit code, a QR code, there has to be a way that the public can have bona fides where they can say, yes, that is a federal agent. If you look at his shoulder, he has a federal ID code that can track if there are complaints. While they're conducting enforcement operations, there's some serious concerns and serious, questionable actions that I wouldn't even say would be borderline there's some actions that have taken place that are violations of human rights, are a violation of constitutional rights, and these actions are being carried out by federal agents. And so, how do you hold agents accountable if you don't even know who they are? There is no badge number, there is no last name, and they're covered up. So, it really stems from that kind of accountability, that kind of federal service and service, to government, whether it's the military, whether it's law enforcement. That's something that you should be proud of. You should not be ashamed of it. You shouldn't be hiding your face. If you're serving the public, whether it be the state government, whether it's local municipalities, whether it's federal government, you shouldn't be trying to hide your face, right? If you're trying to hide your face, then you're probably ashamed of what you're doing.
Are they hiding their face because they're concerned about their safety? They don't want to be targeted. I mean, I guess police. I mean,
The,
police arrest people,
the
but then
ar-
they don't wear a mask.
100%. That argument has been made. I know that there are, and I'll tell you like this: there are some units that are specialized units, and when I was in the Marine Corps, I served with, some Army Special Operations, some MARSOC guys, even some SEAL teams. When someone is operational and they're dealing with very sensitive operations, they will cover up their masks. There will be no way for you to identify them. What we've seen is that 70% of the individuals that are being arrested have no criminal record. If this is basic standard immigration enforcement, you're not going after top cartel members, you're not going after anybody that is to that degree, to that level, then it's hogwash. Then that narrative of, oh, because I fear for this or that or the safety, is hogwash. Now if they are gonna wear these masks, then I would say the meat in the middle would be have some type of badge identifier if that's the case. But we have to give the public the tools, especially with some of the incidents that we've seen with the level and the way that immigration enforcement is being conducted in the United States. We have to give residents, Americans, the tools so that they're able to later on file those complaints and hold individuals accountable. Just the other month or 2 months ago, in my city, we had a family that was involved in a fender bender with ICE or Border Patrol agents. A week after that, that family put in a claim because they had damage to their Jeeps. They put in a claim. We have every right to seek redress from the government. 3 days after that claim, at 7 in the morning, they had about 35 to 45 fully armed, federal agents in tactical gear. They used a shape charge. They blew her window out. They blew their window and their door off its hinges. The only people that were home was Jenny, her 6-year-old son, and her 1-year-old son. And all of this, I remind you, was over a fender bender. And her boyfriend,
Wow.
George, who they were looking for, who, by the way, they racially profiled. They thought George was undocumented. Um, George had just left to work, and George turned himself in that day. He was out on a $5,000 bond, and you know what the charge was? Damage to federal property. So they did everything that they did: the blowing the door off, blowing the windows, sending a drone, using flashbangs, completely terrorizing this family, was over a fender bender, and they framed it as damage to federal property. Now they asked them for a quote. They said, hey, can we get a quote over what happened? We don't comment on ongoing investigations, but let this be a reminder to anyone that tries to impede on any federal agency that this can happen to you too as well. And so it just that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with, right? Is this kind of campaign of domestic terror, and this hyper militarization, and just kind of this overkill on some of the most subtle or things that it should really not be happening. And by the way, Jenny and George are both U.S. born American citizens. They're not undocumented. They are not visa students. They're not. They're born here.
So are they filing a claim against the federal government?
I'm not sure because last week we found out that those charges were dropped. Thank God that that family it doesn't have to deal with that. However, the charges were dropped with prejudice, meaning that at any moment the federal government can come back and bring those charges back. So I'm not sure if that was their intent. What I would have wanted was those charges being dropped without sorry, being dropped with prejudice, because they were dropped without prejudice, which means they can come back. So just to clarify that. So the families, obviously, I've talked to them. They're in fear of their safety. They are in fear that this is something that can quickly reactivate, that this is an experience that they can experience again. So there's a lot of trauma that they're going to have to process and deal with, and we're just talking about the adults here. We haven't even talked about the 6-year-old or the 1-year-old with some of the stuff that they, have had to experience. So
Uh,
it's very
Mayor
shameful.
Flores, one of the folks that has got a question. Jim Paulsgrove says, please address the LA rioters that wear masks.
100%. So, you talk about wearing masks, right? Those people that wear masks or cover their faces up, there we have such thing as freedom of speech. We have a such thing as freedom to assemble. Those individuals are not getting paid. One, they're not getting benefits, medical, dental. They're not employees, and so we cannot mandate out of residents or people, everyday Americans, to wear or not wear a mask. However, when you have public servants that are getting paid, that are on the clock, that are working, that have an official capacity. And like I said, LA protesters who are covered up in masks, they are not going out and they are not picking up people off the street. They're not, taking a constitutional right and imprisoning people and taking people and putting them in jails, right? The people that are doing that, that's why it's the different level of scrutiny, because one person has the power to take certain rights away from you, and we should know who they are. The other person is, freedom of speech and whatnot. Now, once they cross that line and start causing damage to property, they can be arrested, they can be detained. 100% do not condone or agree with, anything that goes beyond the scope of, peaceful protesting or expressing your grievances against, the federal government and whatnot. So I just want to make sure we clarify that. But that's the difference between that. It's not a double standard. It's clearly two
So,
different things.
so Mayor, what do you think should happen if ICE wants to arrest? I mean, first of all, at least in your city, uh, Huntington Park population, you said 55 million. I'm sorry, 55,000.
You
Uh,
know, when this started, and I think I know where your question's going, but when this started, I was not opposed to immigration enforcement. I believe that the federal government has every right to enforce federal laws. Um, as time has progressed, I am 100% against immigration enforcement in my community, and I'll tell you why. Once you saw the tactics that they're employing, this campaign of domestic terrorism, the racial profiling, it was very clear that what is happening in LA and across the entire nation is not, a campaign that's rooted in public safety. It is a campaign that is deeply rooted in this white nationalist agenda and the scapegoating of the undocumented and the immigrant. And in my community, those individuals are Latino and Hispanic. And it's very apparent by the racial profiling, by what we've seen take place in our communities, and in particular, these communities that have a high population of Latinos that are being specifically targeted. So, I started off, feeling one way in regards to that issue, and my views have completely shifted just from what I'm seeing and from what I've experienced and from what my residents, especially the Jenny and George, who are just one family, that's had to deal with some of these huge grave injustices that are taking place. I don't recognize my country. I went to war for this country. I went to Iraq and Afghanistan. My job was to find explosives. I was a bomb dog trainer, and I went, to defend, these constitutional freedoms of, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to due process. I mean, you name it. And I'm looking at, these incidents, and it truly is the trampling of the
let me
Constitution. It's
okay.
really
Let me jump in here. So the Obama administration, at least based on everything that I've read, deported more folks.
100%.
Okay. Did you see ICE folks come in to your community, whether you were mayor or not at the time? This is going back, basically, what is it, 8 to 10 years ago, uh, with masks, grabbing people off of Home Depot or restaurants or wherever. Did you see any of that?
They call President Obama the deporter in chief, and you're right. Under his presidency, I believe there was a uptick in deportations. A lot of those deportations took place, and they were allowed to run their course, whatever the claim was for asylum or whatever the immigration status was. It was allowed to run its course, and even during that time of these, like you said, it was a high rate of deportations. We didn't see, some of the tactics. We didn't see, some of those I would say, very violent actions that have been taking place in our communities. We didn't see anything of that nature. I don't think I saw that. I'm only 37, but I don't think I've seen that, in my lifetime. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it definitely puts a sense of fear and terror, especially when they're. I mean, I'm hoping that they're asking for people's um, IDs. I mean, most Americans don't carry proof of citizenship with them. So I don't know how when they pull somebody over, what is the criteria there? Does somebody turn them in, or are they at random walking in looking for Latino and Latina or immigrant Muslims,
You
Middle
know,
Easterns?
Tom Homan went to sorry, Tom Homan, who as a border czar for Donald Trump. He tried to defend the racial profiling and said, well, it's a combination of different factors. And he's like, the location of where they're at, how do they look, do they talk with an accent? And I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not sure if those were his exact words, but
Sure.
my point is that he essentially, laid out the definition of what racial profiling would be, right? And what we're seeing is that their tactics of racial profiling are not working, because you're seeing, U.S. born American citizens that are becoming victims. I mean, we had it in the city of Montebello. A gentleman was coming out of his auto shop and was slammed to the ground. And the entire time he's yelling, I'm an American citizen. Like, what are you doing? I was born here. I'm an American citizen. And they are completely ignoring him. They're putting him in handcuffs. And so my, biggest concern is this: what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And, I'm a lifelong Democrat, but mark my words, my biggest fear is that once, Trump is no longer in office and the Democrats take control of the House and the Senate, that they're going to say, well, now it's our turn, right? And so it starts off with immigrants. Later on, it goes into, Second Amendment, firearms. Then next, it's just freedom of speech. You literally voicing an opposition, or discourse, like where it's like a race to the bottom. And so my ask to people that might be listening to this show is, at some point the adults have to come into the room, and we have to start having these very frank conversations, and we have to have there is an agreement with even friends that I have that are, diehard red Republican. There's an agreement when it comes to, the constitutional protections that this country affords us. And nowhere in there does it state that you have to be documented or undocumented, to have those protections. And that's the beauty of this country.
You make some great points, Mayor. It starts with getting people out of their homes that are U.S. citizens. They may have an accent. They may be born here. They may not be born here. It starts there. Then the Democrats take over, which could be as early as January of 2007. What we're seeing, or we're hearing, or reading about this could be one of the biggest blue waves in American history. And they could go, hey, gun rights, we're going to get rid of gun rights. You're right. And then after that, it goes to freedom of speech by the next organ. And we start losing really the beautiful things about our country. I keep going back to Ronald Reagan's farewell speech, when he talks about bringing people. This is a country that is so advanced, so innovative because of our immigration, because we keep on rejuvenating ourselves by allowing folks to immigrate to our country. Of course, we all want legal immigration. The challenge, and we've talked about this on this show many times, is our government is not addressing the legal immigration side. Figure out who we need to come, do a background check, and allow folks to come in as needed. Have a quota. This year, we're going to allow 2 million people to come in. By the way, as our population is aging and our birth rate is getting close to zero, we are going to need more folks to come into our country. We just need to get them vetted out, make sure that they're not going to. None of us want people coming here illegally and then live off the system, get free everything, healthcare benefits, the stuff that we Americans that have paid taxes to all of our lives. So Let's have a legal immigration system that figures out how to get folks in appropriately, legally, and they get social security cards. They start paying taxes, and a lot of. Let me ask you this: we have had many people on this show that say, if you're undocumented, you're paying a lot of taxes. You're paying all your taxes. Do you know that to be true?
It's called I-10. It's called I-10. People have I-10 numbers. They'll pay into the system and they can not tap into any of it, not the Medicaid, none of the resources that they pay taxes. I will say this: there is a bill that's being presented by, Senator Alex Padilla. It talks about, I believe it's like 7 years and the pathway forward. I don't think, we already met them in the middle with the criminals and the rapists, right? And they went after the tamalera, the lollipop man, the day laborer at Home Depot, and so you know it, it's like George Bush, right? You fool me once, shame on you. You fool me, right? You fool me twice, you can't fool me, right? Like it's one of those. It's like we can have that conversation about 7 years, about 5 years, of 4 years. What's the right years? I will tell you this: while we sit here and have an argument and fight amongst ourselves about removing a population that has intertwined itself into the fabric of what it is, what America is, right? That's what I believe in. I believe that the immigrant and undocumented population is intertwined with the fabric of our country. While we sit here and we pull on that thread and that flag starts to dissolve, let me tell you what is happening at the international level. You have, you know, China, Russia, that are building and strengthening relationships with different countries to the point of economic interdependency. And we're over here worried about, you know, Jose, Pepe, Maria, selling tamales, trying to get a job. And meanwhile, China, Russia, and these, international, actors are running circles around us. And by the time we get done and we look up and we say, look, we did a great job, spent billions, trillions of dollars getting rid of the immigrant. We look up, we're not going to have any friends at the international level. So, with that in mind, and you can use that as a cautionary tale, but with that in mind, I believe that the pathway forward with the immigration issue is an amnesty 2.0. Let's address it. Let's get people and Americans back to work. Let's just restore. I understand we can have the conversations about people that have criminal records and whatnot. I think that people can already see that there's already a meet in the middle. There's already a common ground when it comes to that, right? But I'm talking about the big picture here. I'm talking about even us as a nation. Like, I feel like this is one of those issues that it's this population is being scapegoated, when in reality, as the United States of America, a global leader, we truly are, missing the beat on what our role is, at the international level. So I just want to throw that out there because I think at some point that conversation is going to come up, and I think that, like I said, I think if we're redoing our budget and reallocating, $8 billion more, and now the budget is $54 billion to remove people and separate families and people. These are people that have entire lives here, families, businesses, own property. I mean, they themselves are the embodiment of the American dream. I
You
mean, we
know,
really have to look internally and ask ourselves, like, at what point did we get to the point where we drop so low that we are blind to the humanity of a man who is trying everything to just provide a better, life future for his children? And I think a lot of people lose sight of that. We have a lot more in common than we have different. And if we can figure it out and get past that, then we can really look at what are the issues and what are the concerns that we really need to address. Because, like I said, my biggest fear is that by the time we look up and we spend billions, trillions of dollars, and we look up and we're gonna not have, a foothold or friends at the international level. So that's my
okay,
cautionary
let,
tale.
let me jump in and wrap up. You brought up so many points. Sometimes I feel like is some of this stuff because we both recognize that Obama deported more folks and during his term than well, I don't have the exact numbers, but
No,
that's
yeah, I
what
agree.
I believe
We're
during
agreeing.
anybody else than any
Yeah,
other president. Sometimes I
yeah.
think are these distractions? Because while we're looking over here, something else could be going on over here.
But the reality is this: I have friends who have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees that can't afford to buy a house. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? That are
and that's you know,
they're driving in
there's
student debt. Some of them already
GDP
paid off.
numbers, inflation numbers are coming out, and really one of the tests of our economy, because people go GDP, how does that impact me? Can you afford to buy a home? Can your kids afford to buy a home? And really, that should be one of the gauges. Now, in our state, and
Yeah,
I
if
want
our
to
kids,
say this, our state has a lot to do with not being able to afford housing. Very
you know what,
expensive.
Darius, I'm so upset at myself. At when I was, 8 years old, I was playing Pogs, and what I should have been doing was buying property.
Well, here in
I
California,
was playing
it's difficult
Pogs,
to build homes. It's difficult to
you know,
build. I'm a home builder.
yeah.
Getting permits takes years, and that's why you go to Arkansas, you go to Arizona, Texas, etc. So much easier to build. But you brought up something very interesting: Amnesty 2.0. And I have friends on the very far right that said, listen, we got to deport all 11 million or 15 million or 20 million people that are here illegally. But my next question is, okay, we do that. Let's talk about this. Who's going to pour the concrete, frame your home? Who's going to some of the folks, a lot of the folks in the field, pick in your fruit and vegetable? Who's going to be doing the working in the hospitality sector? So many folks. I mean, our country will shut down. You're going to go to a restaurant and you go, you know what, your table is going to be dirty. We can't, we got to give you dirty dishes or paper plates. I'm not suggesting all immigrants that are undocumented have those jobs, but we know that those 3 or 4 industries have high percentage, and our government for decades has not addressed this. Ronald Reagan, Republican president, was the last president that addressed this in the mid to late 80s. And if we don't address this, you're right. I mean, our country, there's going to be a lot of damage. We have to get these folks. Oh, hold on a second. We have to figure out a pathway for these folks. It's going to be so difficult to look at folks that have been here 20 plus years, 15 plus years. So difficult to look at. Do they have criminal record before they arrived here, or did they have criminal activity here? If we don't address this, our economy is going to be in danger, and we have to attract. Hey, part of our immigration policy is attracting some of the best, should be attracting the best and brightest from all over the world. It's called the H-1B visas. We want that to be, if I was in charge of the immigration program, I would make that unlimited. Let all the brainiest of the brainy people from all over the world with a brief background check to immigrate and live and become residents and citizens of our country.
And I think you hit a good point. Let's get to work. So even if it starts off with saying, hey, you know what, you guys, if you're here, you can work now. You can pay taxes. Do you
Yeah,
understand you know, the amount of economic, what that would generate at the economic level in regards to the GDP? But I will say this. When we have these conversations, and these are very divisive issues, I will tell you this. These are issues that will split. There are domestic issues that are, controversial, that'll have families arguing over the dinner table. But I will tell you this, you know, I'm laughing because I open up my computer at home. I have a Wi-Fi. It opens up, and there's a Wi-Fi there. It says "I love Trump," and it's my neighbor's Wi-Fi. I don't know which neighbor, but I promise you this: that if any of my neighbors, if somebody was breaking into their home or they were calling out for help, you know what I would do? The first thing I'd do, I'd run over there and help, because at the end of the day, those are my neighbors. And I think,
exactly.
and I think we forget that we have these fights. We have, the Democrats on the left, the Republicans on the right, and it fits into what they their agenda of the arguing, the fighting, the bickering. But I will tell you this, and I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm not happy with my party, and I'm not happy with the Republicans
Are you
either.
going to sign up for Elon Musk's America Party?
Hard pass on that one too.
Are you going to
Hard.
run for Congress?
Hard pass on that. No, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm doing stuff locally. I think that, like I said, I think we just have to start having the adults step into the room to have these real conversations, and to, there's certain issues that should not be hyper politicized, and when you really sit down and have these conversations, what you're gonna find is that a lot of the frustration around the, documented around some of those narratives, it's a lot of the fears and the concerns that are deeply tied to economic instability. You not being able to afford food, just scraping by, just being able to afford rent, not being able to buy a house. We have people that are in Congress right now, and I'll give you an example. We have three Democrats. They were all three over the age of 70, and I think those are the seats that are the special elections are happening. Two of them had cancer. One, Texas, Arizona, I forget what the other one is. But my point is this: they all died in office. And so when do we have the conversation of saying, look, I understand that you want to serve and provide your service to this country. The decisions that you're making are for an America that's dead. It's not the America you grew up in. It's not the America where you could work a factory job and then put Bobby and Susie through college and pay a mortgage, and then your wife didn't have to work. She has bridge club at 12. That America is fucking dead. Okay? And we have people that are serving in these leadership roles that don't understand that. And I think that's a frustration with the younger 20, 30, even 40-year-olds, is that American dream does not exist anymore. And that's a frustration. And we want to find somebody. Who do we blame? We'll blame that guy because, and he's taken up and getting a free laptop, and he just got into the country and now he has a cell phone, and, he doesn't have to work now, and now he's getting a check. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that a lot of what I just said is like is a myth of the welfare queen. A lot of those statements are they're not truth. They're not true. There's no truth behind it. But the frustration and that feeling, that raw feeling, is alive and it's real. And both of the parties, I would say the Democrats missed their mark on it. The Republicans, they really get it. They tap into that emotion, they tap into those feelings, and then they point it at the immigrant, right? They point it at this guy's illegal, whatever they like to say. The Democrats just miss the mark completely. But that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that any conversation that I've had, at the core of it, that is the fear.
Okay.
That is the concern of wanting to provide a better life, a better opportunity for our children, for the next generation, and that's at the core of it.
Well, we're gonna wrap up here in 1 minute. By the way, is this a picture of you? And where is this at?
So this is Afghanistan in 2010. That's my military working dog Gretchen. In the back, there's a sheep herder right there. But this is what I was attached with Second Marine Corps Recon with a second MAF out in Afghanistan. That's over there, Kajaki Dam, Sangin Valley, 2010.
How long were you? How long was your tour?
I deployed to Iraq in 2008 for about 8 months, and then I did Afghanistan in 2010 for also another 8 months.
And unfortunately, we're shipping back a lot of Afghani refugees that came over because they snitched on their Taliban, and now we're shipping them back, which is their death sentence.
The moment they get off that plane, they're as good as dead, and it really is shameful what's happening.
Shame on us for doing that. Shame on us. I'm going to say that. Shame on us for doing that.
Yeah, these are people. These are people that, because of their actions, because of how brave they were and the assistance that they gave, some of, the troops that were on the ground. Not only were we able to help a lot of the communities in Iraq and Afghanistan, but we're also able to, save, countless numbers of American lives, and bring people home. And that's the role that they played. So, yeah, it's really unfortunate. I mean, it's
let me see a couple other comments, and we're going to wrap up. Jim Paulsgrove, when you get down to it, we're all immigrants to the Americas. This issue is immigrating legally. And Jim, we got to work with federal government to update legal immigration. And by the way, refugees that are here that have helped U.S. forces in Afghanistan by snitching on Taliban and their folks, we should not be deporting them back to Afghanistan. I really shame on us for doing that. while we were on this show, there was a tsunami a tsunami threat. Let's put it this way: tsunami threat on the west coast of the United States. There it is. Tsunami advisory issued for Western Alaska after magnitude 8.7 earthquake. You're going to read about this coming up shortly. I hope folks are safe all across the world, especially Americans, Alaska, Hawaii, etc., on the west coast of the United States. Okay, Mayor Arturo Flores, it was a pleasure having you on, speaking very candidly to the Unfiltered audience, and we hope to have you back. You have a 30-second message for the audience. What do you want them to do?
Thank you, Darius. I think, some of the biggest concerns that I've communicated to my community members and even the audience is, there's going to come a time where the community is going to get really, frustrated with ICE, with Customs and Border Protection or U.S. Customs. We have to be and understand that local law enforcement is not ICE. Local law enforcement, they're part of our community. They serve our community, and so my community's been put in situations where my PD has had to step in to quelch and calm things down. But my ask, to the people of, Fresno, California, is that, let's make sure that we give that respect, and honor our local law enforcement, and that as frustrated as we get with the federal government, that we don't, muck those waters of, taking out our frustrations on local police, because local police truly are here to serve our communities and keep us safe. And the situation that they're being put in because of the federal government truly is, deteriorating that, relationship that has taken decades to build, that trust that has taken decades to build with the community. So it really is disappointing to see some of the collateral damage that's happening because of some of the tactics that are being, deployed.
Last question for you. Do you think ICE folks, ICE enforcement officials should be removing their masks?
I think that it's an honor to serve for the military. It's an honor to serve for the federal government. And there's nothing that you should be ashamed of when it comes to showing your face and for people to know who you are. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're upholding the legitimate laws of the United States of America, you should not be ashamed of that. You should be able to show your face and for people to know who you are. And at the most minimum, bare minimum, if there are complaints that arise from that service, people should be able to know how to identify and where to direct those complaints.
Mayor Flores, it was a pleasure spending the last 30 minutes with you. I hope that you will return back to Unfiltered soon.
I hope that there's not a reason for me to come back, but that if you send an invite, I'm always, happy to come on here and, have these candid conversations. Nothing's off the table with me, right? I don't have a media team that, filters this. It's just like whatever, you want to talk about, let's have that conversation. And I hope that the audience, enjoyed, some of the narratives, some of the conversations that we're exploring tonight.
They sure did, and our audience is staying steadfast since the beginning. So thank you.
Guys, have a good night.
Thank you. And to the rest of the audience, thank you for watching our great episode this Tuesday night. Have a fantastic week, cool temperatures, and hope to see all of you next Tuesday. Good evening and good night.